Welcome to One Bite is Everything, the podcast that connects the food on your plate to the rest of the world. I'm your host, Dana DePrima. Today's guest carries one of organic farming's founding names into its next chapter. Maria Rodale is the granddaughter of J.I. Rodale, who launched the organic movement in America in the 1940s. She's also the daughter of Robert Rodale, who built the organic movement into a global research effort. Maria spent decades running the family business, eventually serving as the chairman of Rodale, Inc. And today, she's co-chair of the board of the Rodale Institute. She's also the author of 5 books, including Organic Manifesto and Love, Nature, Magic, a Wall Street Journal best read and Nautilus Gold Medal winner. She's currently writing a new book on the history of the organic movement itself. We're talking just weeks after Rodale Institute launched its 10 million acre solution, a $139 million campaign to move 10 million acres of American farmland to organic and regenerative organic production by 2030. Maria and I get into why she thinks agriculture has reached a tipping point, why she believes facts and data alone rarely change a farmer's mind, the surprising political coalition, Republicans and Democrats alike, that's actually driving organic forward right now. We also talk about the blurry and sometimes contested line between organic and regenerative, and why she thinks the future depends less on who's right than on everyone deciding to move forward together. This conversation asks us to consider a fascinating question. If facts and science aren't what change minds about how we grow food, what does? Let's get into it now with Maria Rodale.
We're at a little bit of a tipping point, a big tipping point, in that it's just become so clear to a lot of people, whether they admit to it or not, that the whole chemical experiment with farming has failed. It's failed the soil, it's failed our health, it's failed the farmers, it's failed the environment, and the whole organic movement has been filled with differences of philosophy and belief about how to move forward. But to me, we're at a point where we all have to move forward together holding hands. And we've been doing the research, we've been doing the training, we've been helping farmers convert. And a lot of that, honestly, was funded by my father and the publishing company, which we no longer have. And now we need everybody else to help us get to the next level. And I think the world is ready for the next level, but we just have to invest and build the future that we want to see.
And when you say tipping point, can you give me some of the factors that you see? Like, yes, people in certain segments are like, oh, well, we should be eating whole foods and shopping locally. And I hear that, but I also know that this big industrial complex isn't downsizing.
So I think that's what I mean by we have to hold hands and move forward together. It's like we're never going to get rid of industrial agriculture, but can we improve it? Can we make it less toxic? Can we make it organic? And there's a deep romanticization of the small farm, which is wonderful. But I was talking to a farmer the other week where the whole idea of the local market garden was very New England-y and upstate, because the farms are small and the communities are nearby. But you go out to North Dakota and that doesn't work. That's where no-till is really important. And not just no-till in terms of row crops, but not having crops, having pasture for cattle. So that land was meant to be grazed and meant to be grazed by cattle. So we need everything. And we also need to just acknowledge the different environments. Last week at the Rodale Institute, the Painterland sisters spoke. They have a line of yogurt that's really like the best yogurt you've ever tasted. And all organic and low in sugar and high in protein, all the stuff you want. And they saved their family dairy farm, but they were saying the places that they graze their cattle are hills that tractors can't go on. And so we need everything. We need all the different types of farming and all the different types of farmers to just do the best that they can with the land that they have access to and move away from the judging and like, this is good and this is bad. It's like, okay, we know chemicals are bad. We can judge there. But from there, let's move forward and help each other move forward.
Do you think that farmers in different geographies are looking at the land and saying the best thing that I could do on this land is this? Or are they coming with ideas that, like, well, we've always been vegetable farmers, so we're going to do vegetables here?
I think a lot of farmers have done a combination of what their family members did, along with what the market is encouraging them to do. So whether it's government subsidies or a long time ago, probably 2010, I wrote a book called Organic Manifesto. And I went out to interview, I did focus groups because I was a business person. I was like, I'm going to do focus groups with chemical farmers and find out why they do what they do. And every single one of them was like, the moderator, because I didn't want them to know it was me, I wanted a neutral party, would say, well, where do you get your information from? And every single one would be, well, from my chemical dealer, from my chemical dealer at Segway or at the co-op. Or so it's so ingrained into chemical farmers that that's just the way it is. And getting them to shift that thinking is a combination of changing where they get their information from, but also changing the government subsidies, and also for a lot of them breaking away from what their families did.
I hear, and talking to farmers for many years across many different agricultural disciplines, big, small, all over the country, similar issues or challenges or sort of a set of factors where, for example, as a farmer, I've gone organic and I have 6,000 acres of corn and soybeans, and I've done it with cover crops and all of this, and my yield is the same, and my neighbor still doesn't believe it's possible. And it goes back to like, well, my grandfather did it this way, and I've always done it this way, and the transition is a pain in the butt. But at the same time, I'm hearing they'd love to be off the treadmill of only being able to get their seeds from one place or getting the seeds for free and then having to grow them in a particular way. And they're just sort of stuck paying the bank. I'd love to figure out what that solution is.
Well, I'm pretty confident that it's not science and data and facts and figures or even money that's going to change. It's got to be like an emotional shift. And that comes through storytelling, through personal experience. Maybe somebody gets sick, a family member gets sick, they get sick. That truly is the only thing, each person needs to kind of have their, what I call organic awakening. And it's not something you can manufacture, but somehow we need to think about how we can create more of those moments for people.
Over the next few decades, tens of millions of acres of American farmland are expected to change hands or leave agricultural production altogether. That kind of transition raises a much larger question. What happens to that land, and what kind of food system takes its place? Rodale Institute's goal of transitioning 10 million acres to organic management is one attempt to shape that answer. But reaching that scale requires more than proving that organic agriculture works. It means making decades of research accessible to farmers wherever they are, creating regional support that accounts for differences in soil, climate, crops, and growing conditions, and building a network capable of carrying that knowledge far beyond a single farm or classroom. Because ultimately, those 10 million acres aren't just about agriculture. They represent soil that can be rebuilt, waterways that can carry fewer agricultural pollutants, food grown with human health in mind, and knowledge that can move from one generation of farmers to the next. At a moment when so much farmland is approaching a crossroads, the question isn't only who will farm it next, but how.
Is that the organic movement is like left wing or liberal or hippies only, and that conservative people are not interested in organic. And I have found exactly the opposite to be true. Some of the biggest supporters and helpers of the Rodale Institute are Republicans, even Trump supporters, who are very interested in all the right reasons to be organic. And then sometimes on the other side, the Democrats get in their own way and don't work together to achieve the big goal that we want. So I think the future is going to have to be we all work together, left, right, in the middle, and stop fighting amongst ourselves.
I work with farmers who are definitely like organic farmers who don't really feel like they need a certification, who feel very sort of righteous about what's happened with the organic movement, right? Like it's come off of their backs and out of their farms, and now it's codified and industrialized to some extent, like you're saying, in these big areas where you really should be growing lots and lots on fields as opposed to the New England style. And now, while that's codified, there's this regenerative thread has come in. And again, farmers are like, I know what regenerative is and I do it, and here's what that means. But then when we get on the big stage, it gets co-opted. Tell me what's going on with that.
Interestingly, my interview this morning that I had was with Patrick Holden, who's the head of the UK Soil Association and has been working with King Charles for the last 40 years. And I said, what's going on in England right now? And he said, actually, what we're doing with the regenerative thing, he said, there's regen chem and regen organic. So we're calling out those greenwashers and say they're regenerative chemical. Sure, they might be doing cover crops and maybe they're like doing no-till, but they're still using chemicals. And that's a really important thing for people to understand. And even like Gabe Brown, who's been idealized in a lot of documentaries, he still uses chemicals. He's not organic. And it's a constant evolution, come up with one word, people find ways to like say it's not good enough. I think there's a certain kind of inherent resistance in a lot of people to just work with an existing word. They always want to do something different. They want to be the one to develop the next thing. And that's fine. That's great. But I always want to bring it back to why are we doing this? And who are we doing it for? And we're doing it for everyone who goes to the supermarket or goes to the farmer's market and wants to have trust and faith in what they're buying and know that it's not going to poison them. And the way to do that is to make sure it stays like simple and understandable, because the more we confuse it for people and put all these voices in their head, the more they just revert to like, I'm just going to buy the cheapest thing, or I'm just going to buy the thing that I know. So to me, it's really imperative that we stop trying to confuse people and again, work together to keep organic as good as it can be. We have now the regenerative organic seal, which a lot of companies are using. That's great because it includes animal welfare and fair wages for workers.
So it's sort of like an organic plus.
Right.
I think that's very interesting. Some of the conversations that I've had around regenerative have been like how to make it easier, meaning it's hard to be certified organic for a reason. I mean, like when I see that label, I know what's in there or not in there. And like you said, there's some trust. And so if I have a sparkly new word that doesn't have a standard and isn't codified, then I can just branch it around and I don't need a sticker or all of the work that goes behind that.
One of the things I've really learned doing the research for this book I'm working on is just how long and hard it took to get the USDA organics. I mean, that was excruciating for a lot of people. And yeah, there's compromises, but it's like, it's better than nothing. And what, especially in today's times when like regulations are being erased and then you have explosive diarrhea outbreaks. It's like, you want somebody doing the hard work of helping you be certified organic. And actually that's what our consulting business helps farmers do. If you're like a farmer and you're like, I want to be certified, but I need help, we can help. And not only that, the Rodale Institute can help sometimes for free because we get grants to help. So it's not like we're trying to make money from it.
Regenerative agriculture is expanding the conversation in important ways, bringing soil health, biodiversity, animal welfare, farm worker well-being, and long-term ecological resilience into a much bigger picture of what responsible farming can look like. But the more powerful a word becomes, the more valuable it becomes in the marketplace, and the greater the temptation to use it without fully living up to what it represents. That's where standards begin to matter. Most people standing in a grocery store aisle don't have the time or the ability to trace a product back to the field, investigate how the soil was managed, or determine which chemicals were used along the way. They depend on the language on the package to carry that information for them. And perhaps that's what decades of work at Rodale Institute ultimately brings this conversation back to. Whatever we call the future of farming, the words have to mean something. Because when a label becomes broad enough to accommodate almost anything, it stops helping us distinguish between meaningful change and good marketing. And when that happens, what's lost isn't just the definition of a word. It's the trust that allows people to believe the choices they make at the grocery store actually reflect the values they thought they were supporting. I want to go back to something that you said about trust, because I think that has been, I don't know if people are like saying it as much as they're saying explosive diarrhea right now, but it comes back to who can you trust? What kind of farmer can you trust? What kind of companies that are producing our food, even the bigger ones, like how do we know we can trust them? And when you just mentioned, for example, in the regenerative organic certification, that there are farm worker rights. I mean, obviously, I think they're still sifting through what the problem is and where it is and why it happened. But if farm workers don't have the opportunity to take a break, then this is where we end up.
Yeah.
And that trust factor is just so important. And how do you instill that across a bigger system that includes organic, but includes obviously other farms?
The only way you can instill it is through actions and demonstrating trust. And the other thing that I've uncovered, which, and I knew going into writing my book, but like now I can see it so clearly, is that there is a systematic sort of PR marketing approach that a lot of untrustworthy big companies use to create doubt in the minds of consumers. So think about cigarettes. My doctor smokes Camel. Like, those are real ads. Or like there's sugar ads from the 1950s. It's like, I eat sugar to lose weight so I can be beautiful for my husband, and we're seeing that now in social media with instilling doubt in organic. Basically, bad actors want to instill doubt so that you just give up and say, oh, you know what? I hate those weeds. I'm going to use Roundup. Or I don't want to pay more for eggs, so I'm just going to eat the cheap eggs. And we, as an organic movement, have not been as sophisticated or consistent with how we instill faith and trust in what we do.
Do you think that is like the only way to instill faith and trust in you is to make sure that people are afraid of the alternative?
No, I don't think fear is at all what, in fact, I think we've used fear too much. I think we have to find the positive ways to communicate that. The benefits, what are the benefits? The benefits are like healthy children, healthy people, healthy food, abundant, diverse nature, birds, wildlife, stronger communities. I mean, it's just everything that's good is what we have to learn how to communicate.
Yeah, I agree with you. I worry sometimes that these bigger corporations, and I have a history, career working in teeny tiny nonprofits and big corporations. So I've seen them from the inside, and they have budgets, and
They have big budgets.
They have big budgets, and they have teams of people who are dedicated to coming up with a creative message, getting the message out. And okay, well, I realize we're not talking about small farmers being the solutions here, but they're everything. They're the veterinarian, they're the horticulturalist, they're the disaster recovery team, they're the marketing team and bookkeeping and all of that. And I mean, even I guess when you're getting to the organic is what, 1% of what we're growing in the United States. So even if you take the bigger companies, we're no match for all of that marketing.
I mean, there's truth in that. And again, I was a magazine publisher. We had advertising, so I understand exactly what you're saying. And it used to infuriate me that we could get ads for the horrible things very easily, but the good organic companies would never spend money on ads, you know? And so part of that is like, where are all their profits coming from that they can spend on this? Well, part of it is they're investing those profits into advertising, which is good, but they're also ripping you off, you know, and making profits from things that are not really good for anybody. So I think, though, I've been sort of inspired, and maybe, I don't know, maybe you're one of these people who go into that world, see it for what it is, and go, wait a minute, I don't want to be a part of this. And I want to use what I've learned for the other side, for good.
Perhaps part of the challenge is that we've become increasingly disconnected from the living world around us and from the systems that feed us. Most people standing in a grocery store aren't thinking about the soil their food came from, the insects that pollinated it, the water used to grow it, or the farmer who produced it. They're thinking about what they can afford, what tastes good, what their kids will eat, what's convenient, and what they can get on the table that night. Food arrives packaged and ready to buy, often with very little connection to the landscape it came from. And over time, that distance can make things like soil health and biodiversity feel abstract. If we've never stood in a field alive with birds, insects, wildflowers, and healthy soil beneath our feet, we may not even have a reference point for what abundance looks like and feels like, or recognize its absence. It can tell us what we're losing, but they can't always make us feel connected to what was there in the first place. Maybe that's where the story needs to change, not by asking people to care more about agriculture, but by helping restore the connection between our everyday lives and the living systems behind them. Make biodiversity something people can see and hear again. Connect healthy soil to the food on our tables, cleaner farming to the water we drink, and thriving farms to the communities we live in. Because people rarely change simply because they've been told what they should care about. They move towards something when they can see themselves in it. And perhaps the desire for a different food system begins when we stop experiencing nature as something somewhere else. And remember that every meal is already in a relationship with it. Just the overall idea of an organic movement, there's this structure, and your family has worked on that structure for decades and decades. And I find it really interesting that here you are, and part of what I see writing about and doing is removing structure and having this garden that's super wild. And I love how you talk about the chaos there. It's interesting to see that as you've grown up in this, what was wild. Organic was a real wild concept in the face of the industrial green revolution. And then back to wild, codified, and now you're here in your garden being wild again.
I think that comes from what I learned writing Love Nature Magic, is the importance of wildness and embracing the things of wildness, including the scary things. And when I look back on the history, not just of the organic movement, but of the health food movement, because they're intertwined, so there's a lot of rigidity. So even if it's an organic farmer or like a natural foods person, it's very rigid. It's like, eat this, not that. Don't do this. You have to do that. It's just all so many rules and regulations. But the more I've researched, there's no one miracle food. You know, there's no one miracle cure. People are healthy when they eat indigenously from their regions. And then I'm also a landscaper. That's my passion. That's how I cope with stress. You know, it's like I was rigid. So I call it like the Martha Stewart landscaping rigidity. It's like it's got to be orderly and tidy and neat. And the more I relaxed about it, the more I started to learn about the magic of these plants that we call weeds. And there's a lot of like, again, I was talking to Patrick Holden about this morning because he's seeing the same thing in England, where there's a lot of like conservation organizations and nature-based organizations that are still using tons of Roundup to get rid of invasive plants. And that's a rigidity we should just stop. So that's part of my mission too.
Yeah, I've long had I don't know, a complicated thought process when it comes to invasive species. And I think we're here for a short time, and nature's here for a really long time. And we have, for example, in the Catskills, we have the woolly adelgid that's eating all of the hemlocks and killing all of the hemlocks, right? And so the short-term view is like get rid of the woolly adelgid and save the hemlocks. And the long view is that when they eat all of the hemlocks, or most of them, they won't have anything to eat anymore and they'll disappear. And hemlocks will return. I mean, it's not going to happen in my lifetime, but
what if the hemlocks are deciding together as a species that they want to move north because it's getting too hot? And they're like, okay, we're moving north. We're out of here. And then whatever those woolly things are, they're just decomposing what has already left. The spirit of those trees have already left. So it's part of the cycle of nature that is much more intelligent than we are.
Maybe one of the hardest things about understanding nature is that we experience it on a human timescale. A forest that disappears over 20 years feels catastrophic to us because 20 years is a significant portion of a life. But ecosystems are carrying histories that stretch back thousands of years and responding to conditions that may continue changing long after we're gone. What looks like disorder in a garden, decline in a forest, or the arrival of a species that wasn't there before may be part of a process whose outcome we simply won't live long enough to see. And that creates an uncomfortable limit to the idea of stewardship. We're being asked to care for systems we can never fully understand, on timelines we can never fully witness. Maybe the humility in wildness comes from recognizing that, not becoming passive, but becoming less certain that every change is a problem to solve. There's something profound about tending a piece of land while knowing you are only meeting it for one brief chapter of a story that began long before you and will continue long after you.
yeah, I don't think that we have a lot of patience for that kind of long term as a species and with whatever consciousness we come with. But it would be interesting for us to adopt that a little bit more and to see, like, things cycle through. In the privileged seat that you've had at the front lines of the organic movement, what's one thing that you think we've missed?
The importance of compassion for each other, and that we're all trying the best we can. Instead of fighting and arguing, how can we acknowledge where everybody is and then find ways to move forward together? Even the compassion for the chemical farmer, we're going to have much more success when we sit down with people compassionately. And we may never change their minds, but trying to argue, like, okay, we've seen that. It doesn't work. Arguing does not work. And also the importance of just sharing meals with each other, Food has taken on importance, but it tends to be either elitist, like gardening, it's got to be perfect. Whereas just like sitting down with a sandwich or something that's not perfect, but nourishing, a bowl of soup, that simplicity.
Yeah, break some bread.
We've missed the importance of just doing that and letting it be okay that we're not perfect.
When you just said that word elitist, I think sometimes that can get attached to organic for some reason, or that farmers markets are elitist. And then I see farmers market shoppers like, okay, I'm going to show you the dollars and cents. Like, go to the grocery store and compare it to this. And it's like the prices aren't really different when you're comparing for real, like the math.
So the history of that, just so you know, like in the early days of the organic movement when there were like co-ops and stuff. There was no distribution system for like fruits and vegetables, and they were often like really ugly and old. Food would show up and it would sit there, and there wasn't like a whole system for kind of professionalizing food distribution. So there was like a really important challenge. Okay, how do we make this food good? How do we make it look good? And so Alice Waters comes in and she starts working directly with farmers, and she leads the way and trains all these chefs. And the chefs were leaders, but they were also creating very expensive experiences. So that's where the kind of elitism comes from. It's just part of the evolution of the movement. So now we have to kind of just bring it down to earth for everyone.
Yeah, bring it back to the people. What can the regular non-farmer type people who are considering where we are in the world, what's something that they can do to help in the hand-holding, move it forward way? And the other question is for the farmers who are listening, that you said that the Rodale Institute is there to help, and I want to make sure they know how to access that.
So for everybody, including farmers and regular people, what I said in Organic Manifesto still holds, which is vote with your dollars, support organic in whatever way you can afford to, in whatever place you can, because that is market data that drives businesses. That's how the big industrial companies make their decisions. Like if you're buying organic food, they pay attention and they start to shift their behavior. And along with that, and this is for everybody again, is try to stop being afraid of things and trying to kill things that you're afraid of, like ants and spiders and snakes. These are our friends, they're our allies, and they're working on our behalf to keep nature healthy. So stop thinking that killing something is going to make you safer. It's not. It's actually going to hurt you more. And then for farmers, go to rodaleinstitute.org, and there's a whole section there on the consulting business and how we can help, and all the workshops that we're doing. And it's for consumers too. You don't have to be a farmer to learn from what we're doing.
There's more coming. 100 million people.
But we need everybody.
Yeah,
So.
100 million people, 100,000 farmers and educators, etc.
Yeah, we've got
10
big goals.
trials, 10 million acres, all the big numbers.
All the big numbers. We're done playing small.
I'm not sure that that's how we would define what Rodale has done.
And when I say we're done playing small, I'm really talking about the whole organic movement. It's like, okay, we've hovered at this 1%, 4%, whatever. It's like, come on, we've got to go all the way. It's like, it is the future. It's better for everyone. Let's do it. One of the things I discovered in my research is that one of the earliest concepts in the organic movement, even before it was a movement, Sir Albert Howard is considered one of the founding fathers, but his wife talked about the law of return, which is actually like a Buddhist idea as well, where this is the cycle of nature. It's like you grow something and then you have to return something to the earth. And in the olden days, you could return horse manure or even human manure, but we're no longer thinking about the land in that way. And all the cow manure of those CAFOs is going into big vats and like poisoning people instead of the cows being on the grasslands and fertilizing the earth. So we really have to start thinking about that law of return again. And how can we nourish the soil with compost and with plants that are good? I like to eat clams, steamed clams. And I put the clam shells on wherever I'm going to grow tomatoes because the tomatoes need calcium. It's easy and it works. So there's a lot of waste in our current system that should be going back into the land. And I think that's part of the future of what we have to figure out.
Oh, thank you so much for being here and for joining me on this episode of One Bite is Everything. If there's one thing I appreciated about this conversation, and I appreciated many of these moments, it's Maria's idea of the organic awakening, that moment when something clicks for someone personally, and how she believes real change comes from those moments rather than from spreadsheets full of data. Whether you're already sold on organic, still skeptical, or just trying to figure out what to put in your cart this week, it's worth asking what your own organic awakening might look like, and whether holding hands across our differences might get us further than picking sides ever will. If you'd like to learn more about Maria's work and Rodale Institute's 10 Million Acre Solution, you'll find helpful links in the show notes. If you enjoyed today's episode, I would be so grateful if you'd leave a rating or review wherever you listen to your podcasts. It really does help more people like you discover these conversations. One Bite is Everything is in the top 3% of all podcasts globally. It's also on the top 100 list for both food and agricultural podcasts, and a proud part of Heritage Radio Network, home to the best voices in food. And all for a good reason, you. So keep listening, and don't forget to leave a review. Apple Podcasts is very helpful, and a 5-star rating wherever you listen. One Bite is Everything is a weekly show with interesting interviews like this one, conversations and insights. I am your host, Dana DePrima. This episode and all interviews are co-produced by Sonia Dillon with sound design and original music always by Russell Chapa. I look forward to being here with you again next week on One Bite is Everything. Until then, eat like it matters, because it does.